Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Today I'm with my second guest who's about to perform at Capitol Hill Block Party of this year. This marks like the second year of having Capitol Hill Block Party guests on, so I'm super excited. Before living in Seattle, he was in a band called Pompeii in Texas. Now here in Seattle, he has a solo project. I'm pretty sure it's a solo project, Early Internet, right?
With friends.
Yeah. Okay. In a new project called, or newish project called Early Internet. It's my pleasure to have on Dean Stafford.
Thanks a lot.
Hell yeah. So let's start in the present and then maybe work our way backwards a little bit. So
sure.
Vice versa, like reversed, you know? So Early Internet, I think your first project came out in 2019 as Early Internet?
Yeah.
Somewhere around there?
Yeah. I released the first, the first record came out October of 2021. Yeah, I think. Or 2022. It's all a blur because of COVID. Okay. But basically, the first single did come out, I want to say, in 2019.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
And then how did that come to be?
Oh, man. I was in Austin. I wrote the first song, Blankets, years ago, like the first version of it in like 2010 at a friend's house. And then it just was on the back burner. It didn't fit with the band I was in at the time. I just didn't think it was going to come to fruition. And then years later, I don't know, it was always just kind of toying around. And then when I started being like, I'm going to try to do a solo thing for a while, I just pulled together as many songs as I could. I almost forgot how to write a full song myself without a band. And so that was one of the ones that I remembered. And then it was part of like a batch of 30 demos. Dang. Sent them all to my producer, Devin Corey in Los Angeles. And then that was one of them that got picked, and that ended up being the first single that we went with. So.
And have you always had a producer, even in a band, or? Because that's kind of a confusing thing where some people feel like bands don't have producers, but sometimes they do as well.
Yeah, in the band, my old band, it was like the first producer was kind of like almost assigned to us by our old label, but we loved working with a great producer. And then the second one, just through mutual friends and kind of serendipity, and then the third one was just somebody we kind of knew recorded a lot of bands that we admired, and so we went with them. So it was always kind of like a hodgepodge. This time around, it was more intentional. I knew I wanted more of like a kind of pop sound and production versus just like, you know, another indie dad rock band that I was kind of on a trajectory toward becoming. I love some dad rock, you know, but I was
break down what is dad rock for people who don't know.
You know,
there's so many different types of rock.
There's just this archetype of like, and I should not do any sort of stereotyping, but when men reach a certain age, I feel like, and they grew up listening to like either like punk, indie, or college bands, it kind of like there's this archetype of like, you know, the bearded, scruffy, kind of depressed looking guy who just is I don't know, really becomes obsessed with like Wilco or something, and I love Wilco, but I was like, you know, I love live bands, I love collaborating in live bands. I just been doing it so much and been absorbed in that world that I was always kind of fascinated with, like, even when I was a kid, I would like jam up like Ace of Base, you know, like I saw the sign, you know, and just I love pop music, you know, and I felt like this project was an opportunity for me to kind of be unashamed about that versus like the indie cred, you know, that I felt kind of like I was masking myself with. If that makes sense, I don't know, but I just felt more liberated to be like, I want to work with a more pop produced perspective. And I just happened to meet Devin at my producer at a house party. I was playing a house show in LA.
Nice.
And I heard some of his stuff, and as soon as I met him, I was like, I'm gonna fly you to Austin. I had a couple drinks, and I was like, I'm gonna fly you to Austin, and I did, and we did the whole first record in Austin, Texas, and wrapped it up in LA, and then I moved to LA.
Dang, well, I'm happy you stuck with it though.
Yeah,
I've definitely had a few times where like I've been at a party where I don't know, I tell someone the answers to the universe, and I don't remember that whatsoever, and then they'll be like, what you said to me that one night, like, stuck with me for the rest of my life. You know,
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck. And then at the end, you're like, come on my show anytime. And I was like, oh no, did I say that? But also back to the dad rock, just to wrap that up. That's the Wilco reference. It's fucking perfect.
That's just like what I think of. It's like all of my friends who are still in Austin. It's like one day, you know, they're all wearing like denim jackets with like pins, and they're like still punk, and like, and then like I'll run into them years later, and they all have like Stetson hats and
man.
like and boots, and like, yeah, and play like lap steel or whatever. Which, again, not knocking it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a special place in my heart for that. Still love and miss the homeland, Texas. I was just there. But yeah, just wanted to spread my wings and fly into the pop world, you know.
Got it. So you went from Texas to LA to Seattle. Like, why Seattle of all places?
Yeah, so I think first there was the seed in my mind growing up where my sister, who's older than me, actually I have her name tattooed on me.
Hey, there we go. Hell yeah.
She was responsible for a lot of my early music development. I would like just go in her room and find all her CDs and listen. And a lot of it was Seattle-based artists. You know, of course, grunge was like big when she was coming of age. And so like the tale as old as time, like bands like Nirvana, you know, and like that kind of thing. It was like, wow, this is so cool. And it was this kind of like fictional place in my mind of like where like all this cool art is happening.
Yeah.
Obviously, like a different place and environment than Texas with all the trees and just kind of dreamy. And so there was that. And then years later, my sister actually moved to Seattle and has lived here for like 15 plus years. And I would come visit and I would just have her drop me off, you know, in like Capitol Hill. And I would just like try to befriend strangers, just like, what's going on? And I would end up in these like cool art spaces watching DIY shows. And so that was part two. And then the third was kind of like mid-pandemic when I was in LA and I was practically living almost downtown, just like on the east side and downtown. And then but I couldn't enjoy LA like as much as I was when I first moved there because you know, we were on lockdown and all that. And so the first wide open space I could think of to kind of hunker down was my sister's place in Seattle. And then simultaneously had girlfriend got a job up here and we were dating long distance. So it was like, let's pull the trigger and go up there.
Wow.
And yeah, I've been here for, I guess, like 2 years now.
Dang, I had no idea. You're still fresh then, super fresh.
I am, and even then I was like in the burbs at my sister's house, and so I'm like just coming up on a full year in August, like being in Seattle proper. So
that's pretty crazy then, because you already were performing at Capitol Hill Block Party. That's awesome.
I knock on wood, and I mean yeah, it's awesome. I had a mutual friend from Texas introduce me to an artist up here named Sea Lemon, who's also playing, Natalie. And so she connected me with like some people she knew as well. And I like her songs. And so, yeah, it's just been, I played my first show with Sea Lemon actually at Cafe Racer last year. So
that's awesome. That's so crazy how everything's connected. I just met Sea Lemon during South by this year.
Really?
I was working with, do you know what Dick's Drive-In is yet?
Oh,
hopefully
yeah.
you do. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So I do some work with Dick's, and we put on like a live stage performance for South by artists this year.
Awesome.
At this place called Rich's Art Gallery, which is like I think this was their first year being an official South by affiliate venue or whatever. So
very familiar with South by. Was it a day show or was it like a?
So what we did is we would record, what was it, 3 to 4 bands a day, like with 4K cameras, and it was like 5 to 6 cameras set up, and we built this whole stage for them. And then we've been still putting out, because we had like 12 bands or something. So like we've still been putting out some of those episodes.
Very cool.
Yeah,
I'll check them out.
Yeah, I think Sea Lemons is coming out not this week, maybe next week.
Awesome.
Yeah, so
sweet.
That's crazy because I met them in Texas and you're from Texas.
Yeah, it is small world. It's wild. It really is. Yeah, and she's actually gonna be performing like right before me.
That's awesome.
I'm trying to get her. We've talked about her coming on if there's time because it's so bumper to bumper. But her coming on and singing a song with me during my set.
That's so cool.
Fingers crossed it works out. But.
So you are like a solo project now, or how does that?
The way it works is essentially like I write all the songs. It's so that's all kind of me. I just bunker myself away and kind of will come out with songs, just me and a guitar or on my phone or whatever. And then I transfer all those into demos with my little home studio. And then out of like a batch of like usually anywhere between 20 to 30 songs, I'll send those to my producer, Devin. He's kind of like a silent member.
Okay.
So he has kind of like helped me. And it's hard to just be with yourself and not have that objective point of view. I do miss that about being in a band. So he kind of helps like with the yin and the yang when I get too like over analytical or I'm ruminating on something. And so I would say he's kind of a silent member now in a way. But I write all the songs and then we kind of he helps produce it from there. And then when I play live, I always have a band.
Got it.
So I don't want to be like, it's important to me not to be like just like singer-songwriter guy on stage. I want to have like drums. I want it to feel like a rock band basically. So I always have a band.
I feel like that's what a lot of like bands kind of do. They have like someone that they gig with, but then that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, and the idea is that also with the economics of touring, like I've been doing this a while and like it's a lot different now than it was when I first started, right? And so it's just a lot easier to kind of just hit up friends in different places, like oh, maybe I want to play a show in Austin, or maybe I want to play a show in New York or whatever, and you can just tap into like friends that you have who play drums or whatever and just be like, here's my songs, let's do like one rehearsal and then make it happen.
Yeah, for sure.
It's fun to do that and play with different people.
So as like a band, I feel like there's like you're collaborating with the band members versus you don't see that often that bands are collaborating with other bands. Maybe like you'll switch out a member here or there, but like as this like solo project now, are you more like in a collaboration phase at all, or how's that looking?
I feel like the first record, which is like 8 songs, is me trying to figure out how to write a song just start to finish me again versus just kind of like sketches and bringing them to a band and then kind of stream of consciousness jamming and then they become songs. And so that was kind of that. And then now the second record I feel like is an affirmation of that. It's more of like, okay, now I know how to do this. Like I'm recreating it again. And it feels a lot more comfortable and familiar. And I feel like I have more of a grasp on what the project is and what it's doing.
Yeah.
I feel like I kind of start stepping into writing the third record, I think I'll be more in a mindset of like, I'm always thinking like, oh, this person I know or this person I've seen pop up on my TikTok feed or whatever would be awesome at like this kind of a style or song or whatever. So that is always in the back of my mind. I've had like when I lived in LA, it's like, you basically are in the radius of just like a million people who are all just so good at what they do. So at any given moment, you could just be hanging out at somebody's house and it's like, oh, well, let's go, work on that or listen to my song. I'll listen to your song. And like, that's kind of how I'm friends with this artist, Caroline Loveglow. And so
that's a cool ass name.
Yeah. So the song that I actually was talking about, Sea Lemon maybe helping me sing, was this song called Clinging to a Dream. You Don't Want to Leave. A mouthful. And and Caroline, she was just part of our friend group, and Devin was like, hey, you should come over and sing on this part. And we ended up collaborating, and so she's featured on that song, and we did a music video together too. So that does happen, and that's stuff that's always in the back of my mind for sure.
That's cool. So that's interesting coming from like Seattle is definitely like an artistic city. It's kind of getting encroached in by tech, obviously. But like coming from like a Texas or an LA and just being able to like walk outside and connect with artists, kind of potentially with the potential of that. Here in Seattle, it's kind of more cliquey. How has that been for you?
Well, I don't even know if it. I guess I haven't been here long enough to witness a clickiness, if there is one. And I guess that could be anywhere, right? And I think maybe it's not even so much about clicky as it is like finding like your tribe or your niche or whatever people that resonate with you or inspire you.
Yeah.
And I think right out of the gate, like I said, I was fortunate where my friend Mike, he plays in a band, another mouthful band name called Letting Up Despite Great Faults.
Oh, amazing.
That's a mouthful. They've been around for a long time, and they're like a dream pop kind of shoegazy influenced band that I like a lot. And he introduced me to Natalie from Sea Lemon. And so there was that. But, I like to just kind of follow the rabbit hole. Like the way I met Devin, my producer, when I was in LA was just, oh, I will play a house show. Do I know anybody in LA? And then, so I kind of do that and I follow the rabbit hole. And I think now that I've been here, I met Sea Lemon, and then I met this other artist, Dark Soft, who I think moved to Maine recently, but he still comes back. And through him, I met this artist called Sea Salt. And so you just follow that trail, and then people have been like very, very cool. And you go out and you support shows. That's the best way to do it. It's like when you see that somebody that you just met is playing on like a Tuesday, at like Sunset Tavern or whatever.
Yeah, there we go. You know in the venues now.
Yeah, I know. Sunset Tavern, like Chop Suey,
Yes.
So you just kind of go and you hope that you meet people.
Yeah.
Yes. You just try not to be a jerk or anything.
Yeah, that's fair. So like as a Texan, is it like a Texan artist? Is it kind of a given that you're going to like try to go be part of South by? Because you've done a lot of South by shows, right?
I've clocked in some South by time. Yeah, I think I did like 15 years in a row of South by Southwest. Yeah, I'm getting up there. I'm getting older, but I will say like that seeing the evolution of South by has been very interesting. Like I went from like, I want to say like in my earliest memories were like 06, 07 of South by. And I remember every indie band was just like JanSport had this collaboration, and it was this race, like a game show where every band would be like, I've got to get that JanSport backpack that has the South by Southwest patch on it. And everybody could really, truly, I mean, actually, I can't believe I didn't even think about this right from the get-go, but my old band, Pompeii, we signed a record deal playing South by Southwest at like 11 a.m.
Wow.
At like, just some sidebar where people were like barely waking up from their hangovers or whatever. And and that was back when I felt like anything was possible like that. And it happened. Like, and we signed a record deal, and they put out like they bought us a van, they put out a few records, and it was really cool. And I feel like over time it was like, now Lady Gaga is playing the Doritos stage, like in a parking lot, which is still cool. I love some Lady Gaga, but it's like, come play the Subway stage, or it just kind of like, now I say that, but I still think it's cool. I still think it's cool that like, just the experience, and especially that it used to be in my own backyard. So I do miss it, and I do like feel like at the root of it all, like I don't want to be jaded, and I want to still be like, this can be a cool experience, and it is what you make out of it. And so I do think I think like the applications open up soon, so I'm definitely probably am gonna like apply now that I have a couple of records on the way. So
do you miss the fact that it was more like, I don't know if underground is the right word, but like more like grassroots versus like the corporate sponsors, or what do you miss about it more?
Yeah, I mean, it was true discovery, not like product placement discovery type of forced discovery, and a truer sense of like community versus like, not to get all like political, but like this like capitalist machine of like, I mean, it brings so much money into Austin, but I also like, I don't want to be cynical either, and again, it's like, I still think it's possible to have like a really cool time. I definitely would want to go back at some point, either to play. I think the day shows are like super fun too. I was going to tell a story, but I totally forgot. But, it was just like back in the day, I remember it would just be like, I think I would have to like go on a diet and exercise like extensively before I do it again now, because I just remember like there were times when I would be playing like something crazy, like like 7 shows in like 3 days or 2 days or
Damn.
something, and then like one day you're just going and going, and it's like another Red Bull and another Red Bull, and then you're like so delirious, and yeah, you're like, I'm sick of Red Bull.
Dang. So when you were growing up, was like music, it felt like a possibility when you were growing up, or was that like something you discovered later on in like your youth versus like being able to feel like you could do that when you were born, basically?
Yeah, music. So when I grew up in a town called Corpus Christi, Texas, which is known for like Selena, the Tejano pop star, R.I.P.
Oh yes, she has
Yeah.
a documentary. Yes,
Selena Quintanilla Perez. Yeah, she. I graduated from the Selena Auditorium.
Wait, who killed her again? This
Yolanda
is
Saldivar,
Oh my
her
God.
business manager.
Dun dun dun.
Yeah, and
Craziness.
so yeah, Selena. That was kind of the big thing in Corpus, and Whataburger, which was a rival to Dick's, I would
Yes.
say. And so I grew up there, and it was very much like all you had at your disposal was like the mall, to get music, and so music felt kind of like a pipe dream, like a fictional place, kind of like how I viewed Seattle or how I would view like LA or New York, because I was in this kind of like medium small town, and I had the mall at my disposal, and my uncle gave me, like, when I was like 7, like an REM CD, which I find to be funny, because you're like 7, and it's like, let me like listen to Losing My Religion at like 7 years old or something, but simultaneously I had asked my mom for a guitar.
Yeah.
And I went to guitar lessons when I was like 7.
Wow.
But I guess I asked for that. She says I did. And so there's a picture of me at 6 years old holding a guitar with a little bow on it. But yeah, I think in terms of it being accessible, and me, back to your original question, sorry, I'm like very ADD and go on tangents.
No worries.
But I would say that it became accessible to me just in my own community, because we would have like, I remember being in like, when I was 10, my friend Patrick, he had an electric guitar, and we would skateboard, and he'd play guitar, like songs on the radio and stuff. And I'd be like, whoa, I thought that was really cool. He could play like songs I actually heard.
Yeah.
And then in middle school, when I was like 11 or 12, is when I discovered like shows and these like DIY spaces. And so there was like a skate park that would have punk shows. And that's when it became like, oh, and I can play at my middle school dance, and like, because it was a local accessible thing.
Yeah.
And then, as I got older, and, maybe around like 17, it was like, oh, people go on tours, and like, and Texas is so big. It's like, you could literally tour Texas.
That's
like,
so cool.
I still discover new cities I've never heard of in Texas, and I grew up there. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So that, it just kind of expanded from there.
That's so. Your band Pompeii, were you in any bands before that? And from my understanding, you came into Pompeii when you were in like either late high school or early college.
Yeah.
So were you in any bands before that or no?
Oh yeah, tons of very bad bands.
Got it.
No, I mean, like high school, middle school bands, but like
Middle school. You were in a middle school band?
Oh yeah, played the middle school dance. I convinced a couple of the teachers, like half of the middle school dance was like the local DJ from like Hot Z95, and they'd play like Boyz II Men and stuff, and then which I love Boyz II Men. And then after that, like halfway they would cut, and then we would play our like rock songs and like a couple of original songs I wrote. And I think they sounded like it was like Blink-182 or like Silverchair or something. And like,
did the kids like it though? Or?
Yeah, I think it was divisive, but it was intoxicating, to like be like 11 or 12 years old, and it's like all your friends are like packed out in the cafeteria.
Wow.
And so it was awesome. But before that, before Pompeii, it was I wanted to be in my friend's band. They were called the Disruptives, like this like punk band, and I was like, I would always just show up at their rehearsals, whether they wanted me to or not.
Yeah.
I would just start singing their songs, and but I had my own songs too. I had a band called the McFlys, because I'm a huge Back to the Future fan. I've got the DeLorean tattooed on the back of my arm. And
wait, have you ever been in a DeLorean yet?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
I have.
There we
go. Huge nerd for Back to the Future, and so I was in a band called McFly's, and it was kind of like the Ramones, but
Mm.
like the McFly's, and I was Dino McFly, like a Ramones ripoff band. And and then I discovered like Jimmy Eat World's Clarity album, and I decided like, oh, like I want to write like orchestral, like cinematic music with like string sections and kind of emo-ish, like Sunny Day Real Estate. And that's when I started writing like my own songs and different tunings. And I grew up with my drummer Rob Davidson, and he was the drummer of Pompeii. So we grew up together. So he was in a lot of those earlier bands, and then it wasn't until we got to college that we started Pompeii. So.
Nice. And then when did you start like singing? Like, because you said you started with the guitar. How did you decide you can sing?
Singing was, I want to say like one Christmas I had one of those like fake microphones and annoyed everybody in my family because you're just like, what? It's like got this echo on it.
Yeah.
So it was probably less of like singing and more just like, I want attention because I'm a tiny little kid, and I'm still a tiny little kid. But I was always in like plays also. I was in a couple of like, oh God, so cringe, but like a couple like musicals,
Hey, there we go.
And so it would always be like me, like that kind of thing. But but I was never just like jazz hands. Like I was never into that whole scene. I liked film more than I liked film acting more than like theater acting. I still like going to the theater. I think it can be fun, but yeah, I don't know. It was always kind of like, I think that's just one of those things like the guitar where it's like it just kind of was there always, and whether I was good or bad at it, it just kind of was something that I enjoyed doing,
That's super cool though.
Yeah, it's and now it's just like it's so second nature because I've been doing it so long that it's more of like just like a feeling of catharsis or something. It's like going for a run or something. It's like there's something like that's just always stuck with me my whole life, whether it's singing and playing guitar. Yeah.
And would you say like was Pompeii like the next evolution for you? Do you think that was going to be the band that was going to give you any success, or were there any previous bands where like I thought this was going to be the one that got me to where I was going to be?
I think that when I was younger, and even I think it doesn't really go away, but there was this feeling of like, oh wow, that sounded like a real band. Like this song we did, that almost sounded like a real. It was always like I was a fake band, and one day I'll be like a real band, kind of feeling. And it's like one day this magical dust will sprinkle on me, and I'll be a real band. And you also realize when you're younger, like, and especially the way the music industry used to be, it felt like this kind of fairy tale, especially growing up in a smaller town, like, oh, one day, like, I'll be discovered. And like, but like, there's like I used to watch that show Saved by the Bell, and there's this whole episode where like the band in the show Saved by the Bell gets like discovered, and like and it's just the most cliche, cheesy, like, I was jogging by your practice space and I heard you performing and I want to sign you to my record deal, and they become like, and that's such a like.
Wait, do you know who the Mowglis are by any chance?
Yeah, I am familiar with the Mowglis.
I had the lead singer, I think it's Colin Deedon or Dyden, and he has his own solo project called Little Hurt now.
Really?
But I think it was the same magical thing. I think he like had like one talent show performance, and like he got signed from that with his band. Yeah. So like,
I mean, it can happen. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but like,
but that seems like that seems like a thing that used to happen,
right?
Yeah.
But I also, as I've gotten older, my perspective shifts in that, well, one, it's like this whole existential thing where you're like, also like, well, why am I doing this? And if nobody was listening, would I still do this? And like, and I think that there's a lot to unpack in those types of questions. And it's also like, what do you hope? What are you shooting for? And I think all the bands I was inspired by when I really came of age were bands that were career bands who maybe weren't necessarily like huge, but they had cult followings, and like the people that got it really got it and really liked them and were rabid fans. And it wasn't so much like, the just, oh, we're going so big and then we're gonna drop off the
Yeah.
cliff, kind of thing. Love me a good one hit wonder though. But
What's your favorite one hit wonder?
oh man, that's a tough one. That is a tough one.
Yeah, that actually is.
That is a tough one. Man, the first thing that pops in my head, and I feel bad because I would never want like the band to hear me say this, but like, Teenage Dirtbag by Wheatus is like it's a classic song, but there's so many good one hit wonders out there. I'll get back. I'll give you a list.
Amazing.
But yeah, but I think that over time it was like, this narrative of like trying to make it once Pompeii got signed, of like, oh, because we were on the same record label as like My Chemical Romance and like, these bands that were like getting big, and it was part of this whole like emo sweep of things. And
were you emo though? Did you have like any crazy long black hair at any point or anything like that?
did dye my hair black. Now I'm bald, but I I did. I think that's why I'm bald. I dyed my hair black too many times. Yeah, I definitely was like, I wasn't like, I would say that was a little after, like my version of emo was like, oh, I'm listening to like Saves the Day and like the Get Up Kids and like old Jimmy Eat World and like Sunny Day Real Estate and then like bands like My Chemical Romance and Swept Over the Malls Across America, and I was like, that's not real emo. But like me and my girlfriend getting like debates about that, but that's just me being an old crotchety guy. But yeah, I now I'm at a point where it's just like, I just love doing this, and it comes from a genuine place of like, it's just something I do and something I love, and whether or not 10 people or 10,000 people want to listen, then like, whatever, I'm still just gonna do it.
Hell yeah. So and then you ended up moving to LA. When was the LA thing? Was that when you were still with Pompeii at that time, or?
No, it's funny, there was no real like, this is the end of Pompeii kind of thing. It was like, I wasn't even, what happened? We had played South by Southwest. We were on another label, and we did our third album, Loom, and we were playing South by Southwest to support that. Had some amazing shows there. Played this one Under the Radar showcase that was like of Montreal, this band called Mew that I really like, and Torres, like a bunch of cool bands. And it was this like poetry, because that was, I think, one of our last, if not the last show that we played together. And that was at the same exact venue that we signed our record deal during South by Southwest years earlier, like a decade earlier. And so it was this kind of like full circle thing. And we actually went in the studio and did 2 more songs after that, which we never released. We still have them. But we kind of just like imploded on each other. We're all still great friends. We just hung out like 3 weeks ago in Austin, but it was just like, it's crazy being in a band with people from the time you're like, graduating high school and entering college to the time you're like in your early 30s. It's just like your tastes, your like perspectives all shift, and it's hard to kind of like, becomes like a marriage. I hadn't been committed to anything that long, and there was just this kind of unspoken tension where it was like we all got along great, but the second we put on our instruments, we would bicker about just like dumb stuff, And I think that I had been for a long time like living as if I was on tour. Like on like floors and couches and just like I lived better on tour, than I did at home. And I think I was like a
veteran at that point.
Yeah. And I think in a way I was also like running from like growing up, and it becomes weird. There's also this like thing that happens just in life where when you're an artist and other people that you grow up with like aren't artists, and you see them all like getting married and having kids and houses, and then you kind of feel like, oh, like, well, I'm like, I feel stagnant or whatever. It just creates this weird existential crisis. And I was like, I'm either going to stay. I felt like I won the game of Austin. I'd been there forever. But at the same time, it was so different. Like everything had changed in the town. all these condos and places that you love closing down. Same old story. That's everywhere else. But I was just like, I just want to know what it's like to live somewhere else for a while. And so simultaneously, Devin was just like, dude, just come to LA. And he made it sound so simple. And I was just like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it at like 33 years old. I'm going to do this. And I did it, and moved in with like really cool people. I like who were a lot younger than me, and I relived my early 20s all over again. And it was fun. It was really fun, and I made some really good friendships, really good music friendships as well. And so that I have zero regrets about doing that, you know. And I was always afraid had I stayed where I was and what I was doing, that I would have regrets, of what ifs and that kind of thing. And so, and now I'm here. I just feel like it was the right decision.
It's a journey, man. That's wild. So you genuinely like stayed in Texas during that whole era?
Yes.
That's wild.
Yes. I mean, of course, I traveled all the time. I think at
sure.
one point I was trying to move to New York City or Brooklyn. I was dating Pompeii's publicist at the time, and we played CMJ.
How does that happen?
I will protect the innocent. No, I had it in my head that I was like, I'm gonna go to Brooklyn, and a lot of my friends from Austin had moved to Brooklyn. A lot of my close friends, and so I knew more people there too. It was like a lot of my best friends weren't even in Austin anymore; they were in Brooklyn, and so I wanted to go there, and I almost got a job at a record label there. I was on like my third interview and didn't pan out, but I never saw myself moving to LA. It wasn't in my mind, but it all worked out for the best. Yeah, zero regrets.
That's wild. So, but did you move to LA to continue some type of musical journey, or do you thought
absolutely,
it was
100%. I was like, again, it comes back to like, I could be. When I look at like the biggest bands in Austin, like Explosions in the Sky, who I love, Spoon, love Spoon, and You'll Notice by the Trail of Dead, like a lot of great bands out of Austin, letting up despite great faults. But I felt like, again, I wanted to experiment with a larger stage. I wanted to experiment with more polished production and things like that. So I just felt like I wanted to try something different, right? And that's what it comes down to. And I think because of the way that LA is, also in the way of like cinema, I've always thought my music, this is kind of a trope now, but like cinematic songs or whatever, things that I always liked, like that could be on montages in movies, well,
I like that still. Fuck yeah.
Yeah, that lends itself to LA, right? And so it was just kind of serendipity meeting Devin and my friend Lane, who is the person I moved in with. Lane, very talented artist, and she has her own stuff. It's just Layne, and she's playing guitar with pop artist Melanie Martinez.
Oh wow!
Right now, yeah. Dang. So Lane played the last show I played in LA at the Lodge Room like a few months ago. She played guitar with me, so like love her. Just again, absolutely zero hate. Missed the homeland. I just stayed in Austin for 9 days, and I ate nothing but no vegetables for 9 days, just nothing but breakfast tacos and barbecue.
Yes.
And I went to all the old haunts. So I definitely will always love Austin, but I just needed to try something different because it was either just keep doing the same day every day or grow,
Yeah. So what type of, were you in a different project in LA? Was it early internet in LA, or was it like another project besides that?
No, it was early internet. I came to LA and finished I shot the first music video for early internet. Was it Blankets? And it's all over LA. We shot on the Santa Monica Beach. We shot like in the Angeles National Forest. We shot on the steps in Silver Lake. And with my buddy George, who is an Austin-based director,
nice.
Ironically. But shot the first music video right when I moved there. and played a lot of my first shows as early internet in LA. So that was definitely like where I kind of like cut my teeth as early internet.
Nice.
Yeah.
And where'd the name come from? Just like a nostalgia for early
Oh
internet?
man, I wasn't expecting to bring up X's twice in this, but the same publicist of Pompeii. Actually it wasn't. I'm not gonna say it was her. It was, I had a list of names.
Yeah.
And I want to say one night I was listening to the radio or something, and I just heard somebody talking, and they're blah 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 on the early internet, and it was one of those things where it's just like I just added it.
Wow.
I was like, early internet, that's cool. And then I was running this list of names, and she was like, yeah, I like early internet. And you know, living in modern times, one of the biggest pains is running a Google search.
Yeah.
And it's like, does this name already exist? And you're just like, please no, please no. And the second, I'm not kidding you, the second I saw that like it like was open on like all the socials and like everything, I was like I went on this like just I was in a coffee shop, and I was just nonstop like securing every handle I could, and I was like, that's it, that's the name, because I don't want to deal with like, you know, getting my hopes up only to discover it already exists, or this band in like 1992 had this name. And
that's
so
amazing.
That was honestly half of it was just like the fact that it was free. Yeah.
That's great. What does it mean? Like, have you given like a meaning to the name now?
You know, yeah, I think this happens a lot with me. I've noticed in hindsight, when and this happens a lot when I name an album even. A lot of it I feel like comes from my subconscious, and then after the fact it kind of takes on a meaning, and I start thinking like, oh yeah, you know what, this is kind of like, this kind of connects the dots here or there. And I think with the name early internet, you know, it could speak to like, you know, just the generation that I'm a part of, which, you know, going back to like just the culture of like where we're at now, and like how I absorbed music like in the beginning stages on my parents' like, you know, Dell like desktop that was this big, you know, like in the living room. I'm getting on the computer, you know, and like, sorry, the phone's gonna have a busy signal, like, because I'm getting on the computer to aim and all that. And I had a live journal. I think I was a part of like, I had Napster. That's where I heard like my first, like, I downloaded like the song 405 by Death Cab, and like, so I like coming of the age in that time, and discovering bands in that way, like long before even MySpace. There was like, it was like I was on LiveJournal, and what was the other one? It was like makeoutclub.com, which is like sounds so bad, but it was like, there's just this like emo little site with like everybody gets their own little square and like can post a picture and like bands you like and stuff. And I would just see like people would say bands, and I'd be like, oh, Pedro the Lion, I'm gonna go like look that up, you know. And so yeah, back to the meaning, it's just kind of, I don't know, I guess, one, it came subconsciously, two, it was available, and three, I think it speaks to being a millennial, you know. An elder millennial especially, such as myself.
Elder millennial. Yeah. Amazing. It's interesting though, because like it seems, even from checking out your interviews, it seems like there was almost like a more straightforward way of finding new music. Yeah. And like, I think people would like to say there's like a straightforward way of finding music now, but there's just too much of it out there that like sometimes you put too much emphasis on like checking out playlists or just whatever the radio, like the Spotify radios give you. Right. But like, I've been having an issue lately where like I started the podcast as a hip hop podcast, and then it bled into like being a comedy podcast and band podcast, and actors can come on, whoever, right? Yeah. But like, all like, for whatever reason, like a lot of like hip hop blogs and like mixtape websites, they're all getting like sued and taken down.
Really?
I think for like all monetary reasons. Like one of my favorite platforms, Spinrilla, is being sued for like copyright infringement and all this stuff. Which I feel like if it's mixtape, so they're supposed to be like a
that's interesting.
Yeah. But like now, like all the blogs that I used to go on, even and this has happened like in the past like month or two. Like all the blogs would like show whether you like the artist or not, would show all the list of every big artist or mid-tier artist or even lower level artist with their albums coming out. And now that's all gone. So now I'm like trying to like follow like Spotify and like YouTube Music and all that. And it's like all my favorite artists, they're not showing up on these like algorithms for whatever reason. So I have to like follow a specific artist that I like for them to post it, or like, and you still don't know, even with like local music, you don't really know unless you're following them if a local artist is dropping new music or a niche artist. So
well,
like,
for me, KEXP all day.
Got it. Okay.
I am such a fanboy for KEXP, and that's all, of course, human curated, you know. But
that's a good point. Maybe I should. I guess I've never really taken time. I've had tons of KEXP hosts on.
Yeah.
But I've never taken time to look at their curation to see if there's any good.
And there's hip hop shows on KEXP too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Larry Mizell Jr. has one. But
that would be a good guest to have on.
But I hear you though. Yeah, it's like, you know, there's the almighty algorithm, and then there's the fun and the joy of like the actual discovery.
Yeah.
Man, I'm like, and you mentioned hip hop, and I remember I was like back in Austin.
Yeah.
I wish I could remember the station. I was crushed because there was this one hip hop station that would do 90s at noon, and it was just like the best 90s.
Yeah.
And I was crushed when it went away, but that was how I discovered so many songs.
Yeah.
And it was just like the classic terrestrial radio, you know, which seems so archaic now.
Yeah.
But then of course with indie rock, it was like in the 2010s, it was like all the like blogs were huge, you know. I mean, blogs are still there, of course, but that was like so much bigger, I feel like, back in 2010. And now I would say, yeah, the playlists on like Spotify and all those are like,
yeah,
I'm not gonna lie, like I do discover bands that way, you know. But I also feel like word of mouth goes a long way, and I also feel like just looking at like publications like The Stranger or whatever, or just flyers around town. Oh, there's a show at this venue, and like, oh, they literally like just look cool, so I want to like stop by and see them, you know.
Yeah, maybe I think I'm fighting the algorithm too much, but if I am going to fight it, maybe I should be looking more outside with I guess I don't even really look at posters outside too much to see about the shows or whatever.
I guess it depends on the telephone pole, because some of them are just like so plastered that it's all a collage of just like blurs, but
yeah.
Yeah.
I just never want to get to a point where music is like, I guess it's kind of been that no matter what, but I don't want it to be like a point where you're only checking out music that's very opinionated by someone that you don't know who that is sending you music to check out, you know? Like, I don't want there to be a loss of discovery, or you feel like you're discovering stuff when you actually aren't.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. So much of it is like, it's hard to find, like, yeah, I love that feeling, and it's hard to find when you finally do find something that you're like, oh, this is it, you know, like, and you just keep it on repeat for so long. Like, that's such a good feeling, but it's so few and far between. You know?
I've been noticing that a lot lately too. Damn. So a question I have, so as early internet, do people call you early internet, or do they call you Dean, or like, how do you go about that when?
It's a good question. It's kind of fun. It's kind of fun if people call me early internet, because it almost feels like I'm like a cool DJ or something. So I don't care. It could be interchangeable. I don't mind when people are like early internet, because then it's like, oh, that's cool. They know my music, you know? Versus like if they were to be like, oh, Dean, and then I'm like, if they only knew me from early internet and I didn't know them, then the whole time I would be like, do I know this person? I don't know.
Right.
No, I don't care. It could be interchangeable. So
that makes sense. Yeah, I feel that. like I guess I go by NAST. I feel I'm still trying to earn people to call me NAST. I don't feel like people call me NAST yet. They just call me Blake. When I first started my podcast, before I even DJ'd, I went by DJ Blake.
Yeah.
And so, but some people call me DJ Blake, but I'm like, no, that's when I first started. So yeah, it's interesting. Like winning over, I feel like that's another like milestone or win is when you win people over enough to actually call you by your stage name sometimes.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think that's what it is. There's this kind of like cool little like, oh, like now I'm like this is my like, what is it? My alter ego or whatever, like, so I totally get that. Yeah.
So you're about to release supposedly you're about to release a new project soon. Like what's the story behind that?
Yeah. The story behind that is, I literally just got the masters this week, like a day ago, like the final masters. So now it's like very exciting because it's all about getting it out now. So I started work on that. I want to say like right at the start of like 2022, writing it, and then like. I'm seriously getting my years mixed up. Like it's either 2022 or 2023 that I started it, but essentially it was 2022. I'm pretty sure. And then from like Memorial Day weekend of last year to this year, like nice little end caps. Like during that chunk of time was actually when it was being like recorded. So I made a few trips to LA to meet up with Devin, Corey. Round 2, let's do it again. This time instead of Austin, we're recording it in his bedroom in Los Angeles. Yeah. And I am pretty sure I gave him COVID when I went down there.
Oh, no.
On his 30th birthday.
No.
And I felt so bad he had to cancel his 30th birthday party. And then I like the same trip like broke his like shower and the water just wouldn't stop rushing. And it was like a Sunday, so we couldn't get a plumber, so we just like closed the door and kept tracking guitar. And it was like, this album's cursed. This is off to a terrible start. And so I went down, I don't know, maybe like three or four different times, 3 or 4 different sessions, and yeah, did the album, and over the course of that time, and then just got the masters, and so I got the album art now. So it's I don't want to give anything away, but there may or may not be a new song surrounding my Capitol Hill Block Party performance.
Fuck yeah, that's awesome.
July 21st.
So it seems like you go back to like Texas and LA a decent amount. That's kind of interesting because I feel like sometimes when people like close like a chapter in their life or whatever, they feel like they want to stay away. So what is your process about like going back to those places?
What do you mean, like my process?
Like your mind, your thought process. Is it like the chapter is closed, but like you just still feel like
Yeah, I mean, this is something I grapple with as like at a more macro level as an artist. This idea of like we always want to know like where's this artist from? Where are they based out of? I think that's maybe like the second question. Like what's the artist name and like where are they from?
Yeah.
You know, and so it is this kind of weird thing now because so much of my identity as a person is wrapped up in Texas because I spent so much of my life there, you know? I feel like a lot of my discovery of early internet and what it was going to be was rooted in my producers, rooted in Los Angeles, and now kind of branching out into Seattle now. But so I think I feel like I get something from all those places. And even like, I was spending so much time in Brooklyn back in the day too. I like this idea now. The world is small now, because of the internet, right? And all of our friends are spread out. All these artist projects are spread out, and I like this idea of like, oh, I can go to this place and I know exactly where to go to get like really good tacos, or like just having that day in the life kind of experience. And I will say it's like nothing gold can stay. So you go back to these places kind of with a nostalgic frame of mind. I want to go back and I want to relive what I was living at this point in time in these like glory days, and you realize like things have changed. building is gone. You know, a lot of your friends are gone or like moved on or whatever. And so it's not entirely the same, but there's still little pockets. And so I think it's still fun to go in and connect with old haunts and old friends, just like anything else in life. And because there's pros and cons to each place you go. So I think that's my mindset. And it's funny because when you live in a city, you're never like, oh, let me go do the most tourist thing imaginable. But somehow you could live somewhere for years, you know, like I lived in Austin for 15 years. I go back and it's like, oh, let's go to Barton Springs and go swimming. Like, let's, you know, and it's like suddenly you want to do all the tourist stuff. Yeah. And then you drag your friends along and they're like, why are we going here? Like, no, they enjoy Barton Springs just as much as anybody, but you get nostalgic for those things. And I think early internet as a project is a very nostalgic feeling type of project. So that's where it comes from, I think.
I like that. And I'm excited to see your growth in Seattle and see you connect with people. And
I should say, I have been talking a lot about Texas and a lot about LA. That is in no way. I want to shine a light on Seattle because I love Seattle and this is my new home, right? I'm just older and I have all these experiences in these other places, right?
For sure.
I'm learning Seattle and it's exciting. It's like exciting to discover a new place, you know?
100%.
And I definitely clocked in tons of time doing touristy stuff. Love the Mopop.
Yes.
Back when I was visiting my sister before I lived here, she would drop me off at the Mopop. I'd get a couple drinks at that bar, and I'm not kidding you, I would like tear up looking at like Nirvana. And I would just like have this like disposition,
Kurt
like
Cobain,
I would just be like this like pensive, like looking at everything in reverence, you know, and just so excited. So I love KEXP. I love Death Cab for Cutie. You know, I love Sub Pop. I love Barsuk. It's like Capitol Block Party. It's like so much cool stuff here that I feel so grateful to be here. You know.
Hell yeah, and you're doing it, man.
Yeah.
And I hope to have people check this out and learn more about you, and as well as introduce you to some people. So.
Awesome.
Hell yeah, man. With that, what is some final advice you have for up-and-coming artists, creators, influencers?
Oh, advice. Wow. I would say, you know, just I feel like so much pressure. No, I would say just have fun and find what's true to you, and you know, don't get. This goes back to what I was saying earlier. Don't get too caught up in like this idea of one day I will arrive at this place. And I think I was going to say this earlier, but when I look back on success, right, I do think, you know, I'm not like in Times Square on a billboard right now or anything like that. But I think success can be different things at different times in your life. And through all these places, Austin, LA, Seattle, there's always been these like spikes that happen. And so don't get too caught up with like one day everything's going to magically work out. Understand that along your path of doing this, it's very rewarding to look back, and it's not just this, oh, I'm here one day. It's like, wow, this cool thing happened. This cool thing happened as an artist or as a creator. And success, it's like, it's very much a roller coaster, but it's like, it's totally worth doing, and just keep doing it and just keep doing it. Stay consistent until you get gray in your beard like me, and until you can no longer dye your hair black and swoop it because you're bald.
I hope you can send me a picture. I need to see what it looks like. Amazing. And what is the easiest way for people to reach you?
Easiest way for people to reach me would be, social media. I have a website, earlyinternetmusic.com. That's a mouthful though. But if you just search Instagram and TikTok at earlyinternet, you'll find me there, and just shoot me a DM or whatever.
Yeah. Hell yeah. This has been the NAST podcast with
Early Internet
and
Early Internet. Sorry, I wasn't looking at the camera. Early Internet.
Amazing. And we did it.